cover-up. There was no cover-up. I mean,
oh, come on, everyone was saying he's fine, there's no issue, he just had a bit of jet lag. Come on, he wasn't well. Mostly generous statements, I would have said, overnight from world leaders on Biden's decision to call it a day. Trump, of course, the exception, with an extremely sour statement. But
graceless.
Well, very graceless. But I just wonder if that actually reflected his inner feelings about this, because this is the last thing he wanted to happen. This soft target, this easy target, gone.
Yeah, well, it's a brutal defenestration of President Biden. It's been a long time coming, and I think there'll be a post-mortem for many years to come in terms of this kind of historic moment, because some people will say, obviously, that Biden was very selfish. He should have resigned months ago and given the Democrats a clear run to establish a candidate to take on Trump, and there'll be talks about a cover-up. I mean, obviously, I don't know President Biden, but anyone watching the television will have seen his decline in the last year, really. If you see pictures of him about a year ago, he's still kind of got it, if you want to put it that way. So the big and obviously Trump was heading for a very easy victory over the current state of President Biden. But now we have potentially Kamala Harris is going to be the presidential candidate. She looks nailed on unless something very badly goes wrong. And even though she's been vice president for 4 years, she's still in many ways an unknown quantity. We don't really know much about her foreign policy experience. She was responsible for the border control, which is seen as a bit of a failure in the US. So she will face a tough fight against President Trump, but I think he will find her a trickier opponent, not least because she is a woman, and we know what Trump's reputation is with women. It's not going to be easy for him.
It's blown the race wide open. That's what it's done. All of a sudden, whose age is the issue? Well, it's Trump at 78. Whose dodderiness is the issue? It's Trump's, when he often rambles these speeches and gets names wrong, makes all the mistakes. The focus will be on there. And you have, if it is Harris, you've got a former prosecutor versus a convicted felon. You've got the woman against the bloke who's alleged to be a rapist. You look at it all the way down the line, including the race fault line in the US, it's changed completely. Now, I thought Trump was awful in his response, and his second coming isn't any better than his first, and is arguably worse, as he just spews out abuse all the time. He's got a very poor grasp of policy. Well, she is going to be a much more difficult opponent.
Let's hold that thought then. Let's go across to America and join Senator Pat Spearman, who, as I said, knows Kamala Harris extremely well. She's known her for many, many years. Good morning, Pat Spearman.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Has she got what it takes? If she does get the nomination, has she got what it takes to take Trump down?
I believe not only does she have what it takes, but I believe she will use everything that she has learned throughout her life to make sure that America is saved from the catastrophe that would be a second Trump presidency. Let me say a little bit about, because here in America, when you're the vice president, you are in a supporting role. Just as President Biden was in a supporting role when it came to supporting President Obama. And so there are a number of things that Vice President Harris has done on the foreign policy front, and in a number of other ways that people don't necessarily see. But we know here in America that not only does she have what it takes, but she is a fighter. She is a fighter, and every election that she has faced elections where they did not believe she would win. And I believe that this one is like the others, and she is up for the fight, and we are up for the fight with her.
Yes, because if we look at the polls at the moment, according to a poll conducted between July the 5th and the 9th, that was the Washington Post, ABC News, Ipsos poll, she polled about the same as Biden against Trump in head-to-head matchups. In a July the 13th to the 16th, Economist YouGov poll found that she would perform slightly worse than Biden. But I imagine, you know, the campaign starts now, doesn't it? But she does have those polls to consider.
Yeah, we consider the polls, but the polls are really a snapshot in time. And I believe that once people really meet Kamala Harris as the fighter that I already know that she is, and once people hear her vision for America, there is no doubt in my mind that more and more people will understand why she is the most qualified. She's fully qualified to step in as the next president of the United States.
Senator, if I was sitting next to you on a plane or a train or something, and in conversation it emerged that you knew Kamala Harris really well, you went back years, I would settle very happily into my seat and turn to you and say, OK, then, what's she like? You know what I'm asking? Paint us a profile of what this woman is actually like as a person rather than a politician.
So the first thing that I would tell you is that she is tough as nails when it comes to making sure that the right thing is done at the right time. I would also say to you that there is another side of her that deeply respects humanity and human beings. There is a side of her that is empathetic. If you look at her background, being the daughter of a Jamaican father and an Indian mother, and being a woman in America, you know how tough it has been for her at every level in her life. And so I would say to you that when you sit down and talk to her, it's not like talking to a politician. It's really like talking to your friend.
OK, should we turn to Kristen now? Hello. Thank you for joining us. You're from this organisation called the Democrats Abroad, which represents the interests and the rights of Democrats outside of America. So thanks for being here this morning. I suppose the problem here for Kamala Harris is that, certainly initially, she's been part of a cover-up. And there has been a cover-up to hide the fact that Joe Biden was not all there and hasn't been all there for quite some time. And she was part of that. How will she deal with that damage?
I take absolute issue with the statement that there was a cover-up. There was no cover-up. I mean,
oh, come on, everyone was saying he's fine, there's no issue, he just had a bit of jet lag. Come on, he wasn't well.
He is fine. And in fact, I mean, just having come out of that NATO meeting, we had world leaders, including our own Prime Minister here in the UK.
He introduced the President of Ukraine as Putin.
And they laughed, and they joked at the end of that. But Keir Starmer even came out and said that in his private meeting with the President, he had full command of the issues, and they covered a lot of territory in just 1 hour.
Why does he have to go there?
Well, and that's, I think he read the room, if you will, and President Biden has always been open to listening to others. And, I think I don't know. We will probably find out more as time emerges.
Well, Saturday, he was saying, I ain't going anywhere. And Sunday, he says, I'm off. So what's happened then?
I don't know exactly what's happened because it came as a complete shock. I was having my Sunday roast dinner with my family last night.
So you didn't expect it at all?
Not at all. Not at all.
Really?
Not at all.
Because pressure had been building, hadn't there, though? There were increasing calls for him to go. It felt like it was a matter of when, not if.
I think to the outside world, it may have been a lot of noise. And to him, I think he looked at it and knows what he has achieved. His legacy has been one of a tremendous list of accomplishments for the nation. He has the best interest of the American people at heart. And frankly, I am going to miss Joe Biden on this world stage. He has been the person who has brought us back from the brink of losing our democracy. And we know that with Donald Trump once again reemerging in this election, we could potentially be sleepwalking into giving away our democracy again. And that's why I am thrilled that Kamala Harris has had the last 3.5 years to work alongside of Joe Biden, who brings his 50 years of experience with him. She has learned from the very best, so and she will carry, I believe, this whole ticket forward in a really, really strong and dominant way.
You think that she's the right choice? Because we've yet to see who else emerges. I mean, Obama hasn't endorsed her, didn't endorse her with the statement he gave when he was talking about President Biden going. Do you think she will be able to unite the party?
I do. I do. And, there will be a process that's going to unfold. We're all going to see what that process is. We're going to learn about it together. But at the end of the day, I think this party will rally behind Kamala Harris because she has earned the right to be on this ticket. Mm-hmm. Now, there may be other candidates. I think the more interesting question will be who will be her running mate. All of this remains to be seen. But at this point in time, I do think the party's going to rally around her, and rightly so. We are 4 months out from the most consequential election in our lifetime.
Do you think her running mate could be another woman?
I absolutely do. I think the stage is wide open for her to pick whoever she thinks is going to be the best person for the role. And I think we could very easily have a double female ticket.
How will she deal, assuming that she does get the nomination, how will she deal with the personal nature of attacks from Trump? I mean, he's going to be, you know what he's like, he's going to be vicious. How will she deal with that?
Well, she's had 3.5 years of personal attacks coming from Donald Trump and many others on the Republican Party, most of them unfounded and unfair. But you know what? I think as a woman who's the first of anything, she, frankly, has been unfairly attacked. I mean, it came with the territory. She was ready for it, and I think, as your other guest described, you know, she's a tough cookie. Although I've met her, and she's equally kind and generous and warm. So she's got, I think, what it takes.
Let's go back to State Senator Pat Spearman, who I'm sure wants to come in at this point. What about on that issue of how she's going to deal with those attacks from Trump? How do you think she will react in that situation? Because he's definitely going to be, you know, pushing her as hard as he can.
You know, I believe that she will act judiciously. I believe that what she will do is not lower her standards, but she will address issues academically because she's prepared to do that. I also know that as a Black woman in America, you get accustomed to being attacked. Unfairly or not, you get accustomed to that. I believe that what she will do is each time he tries to attack her, she will take the message back and put it on the American people. Those of us who have lived here and lived with the freedoms that we enjoy, we understand that we are at a very critical moment in our time. And so we could always go back and litigate a number of things, you know, in terms of why didn't this happen and why didn't that happen? But we're ready to move forward. And I believe that what Kamala Harris will do is she will use her wisdom, her knowledge, her intellect, and she will use, even sometimes may even use her humor to make sure that the American people are front and center on the stage. And it's not about her. It really isn't about Trump, except it's about what he wants to do. But it's about the American people. It's about moving us forward. It's about protecting our democracy. It's about making sure that we understand, we here in America, we may not be perfect. We are on the way to perfecting our democracy, but for sure, we don't want to lose it. And that's why Kamala Harris is going to not only unite the party, but she will unite America.
Senator Spearman, do you want to come back to me or on me on my initial comment just after we'd spoken to you there, when I basically referred to this cabal that surrounded President Biden and was in full denial about his cognitive issues. And finally, the truth has broken through and he's stepping down. Do you agree with that analysis? Your colleague here certainly didn't. And do you, be honest, do you have a sense of relief now that when you see your candidate getting up to make a speech, you're not going to be biting your fingernails thinking, oh, my God, what are they going to get wrong now? Whose name are they going to forget? Are they going to wander off stage in the wrong direction? All those days are over.
Well, you know, first of all, I have watched President Biden for a very long time, and I watched him long enough to know that he has struggled with a challenge of stuttering. And I have had friends who have had the same challenge, and I've watched them struggle through getting through a sentence and sometimes getting halfway through the sentence and what they wanted to say didn't come out correctly. But here's what I know. He may have looked like he was in decline in the last year, but you just look at what Joe Biden has done. If he was in decline, I'll tell you what, God have mercy on anybody who would try to challenge him if he were not in decline, because he has been able to hold this country together. He's created an economy that has produced more jobs than any other president in any other time. If he was in decline, he has gotten the infrastructure bill passed that has helped states, even those states that don't even like him. But he has been able to do those things. He's been able to usher in an era where we've got lower prescription drugs. We've got caps on prescription drugs that our seniors need. So I'm not interested in talking about maybe he was in decline, maybe he wasn't. But what I am interested in doing, I'm interested in talking about what he has already done. And if you want to know what people can do,
I certainly agree with you that his cognitive abilities are no longer relevant.
And I'm sorry,
because
sir,
he's not running.
I've also sat down and had a conversation with him. I've had a conversation with him, and in my judgment, he was not in decline.
Well, okay, but there are lots. Senator Spearman, I mean, come on, there are so many senior Democrats at your level and above, to be honest, and you have other people, huge supporters and fundraisers like George Clooney, who've all said explicitly that they think he'd lost it. So yours is, I wouldn't say it's a lone voice, but it's certainly in the minority. And anyway, just to repeat, it's over now. He's yesterday's man, isn't he? And he's just marking time before the November election. Stay with us, because we may well want to come back to you. What do you make of this? Interesting, isn't it? But both the Democrats that we've got, one in the studio, one in America, are still in full defence of Biden and saying that, no, he didn't have any cognitive issues.
Yeah, that's because he's their man. Yeah. And all of a sudden they're mourning somebody who has been forced out, who had considerable achievements all the way through his life as a senator, Obama's vice president, 8 years. It's true, his record, if you look at over the last 4 years in terms of jobs and the economy, is really, really good. But he's just been pushed out. And you could see he was clearly in decline. And it was painful to watch because it was both physical and mental, and he would have moments of absolute clarity, then there'd be others when he'd go wandering up a garden path in his head as well as physically, and that was terrible to watch. And so he couldn't stand again. It's better for him because he can go out as undefeated, but it gives the Democrats a chance. It gives them a fighting chance. It's completely changed the dynamics of this contest. It was going only one way, and that was towards Trump victory. And it's been said before, and it was true, the assassin winged Trump, but he killed Biden. And the best thing they can do now is get a candidate quickly, if it's Harris, and unite around that. And she's got to come out fighting. She's got to show all those qualities we've heard she's got. But in truth, here in Britain, we haven't seen them. Because if you're the vice president, you are in, you're in the background.
I mean, I think your question is a very important question, because although, again, I totally obviously agree with Kevin, Biden has a track record second to none over 50 years of politics. But the point is really about the democratic machine, if you like. So the criticism will be, in terms of the American political debate, who knew what when, the classic question you always ask about a political scandal. And the Democrats will be, in my view, on the back foot, because people will say, now that Biden has quit, you've confirmed what we all saw in the debate. Why didn't you do it sooner? So that will be one front they will have to fight on, while also launching their new campaign. So it's not going to be easy. Look,
Just to pick up on your point, Donald Trump has said overnight that in his view, this is one of my questions earlier, Kamala Harris was complicit in that cover-up.
Exactly. He will be making the most of it.
But this is politics. This stuff is going to go around and who knows how it will land with the American public. I think the biggest problem is that Kamala Harris, despite being vice president, is not a known quantity to the American people. You're asking a lot to elect somebody as president who you will have basically 3 months to get to know in a way that they don't know Donald Trump, whatever you think of it.
When Donald Trump was president, they tried to keep the show on the road. And people went in, didn't last long. He went through chiefs of staff at an enormous rate. But they all knew he was balmy and mad and deranged. All right? It was quite clear. But they tried to keep the show on the road. And that's what's happened here with Biden. You could see him physically and mentally beginning to fail.
No, people cannot confront something like that sitting under their noses. It's too existential to confront.
But I totally understand why. If you are Harris, you will have had training wheels on for 3.5 years. All of a sudden, you can take off those training wheels and you can go yourself. And all those divisions, woman of colour, a prosecutor, up against a man who loses his way all the time, and the spotlight has been on Biden.
Don't forget,
because Biden has been frailer and more doddery, but Trump is not a healthy man, physically or mentally.
But also, don't forget, this will be down to kind of crude, hard firepower as well. Who will be the vice president candidate? Probably the governor of Pennsylvania. There are 3 swing states, maybe 6 swing states, where this election is going to be decided. Billions of dollars will be spent in those 6 states. The rest are already effectively in the bag for either side. That's where the fight is going to be.
Well, we've got a few UK stories to talk about, but just before we wrap this up, let's just go back to Pat Spearman briefly. Pat Spearman, be absolutely honest, you must be feeling pretty relieved this morning.
You know what relieves me? It relieves me that we're finally talking about the issues and not about President Biden's health. And let me just say this, because I think that it's important to understand the fight that we are in here in America. We are the ones that have lived these last 18, 20 months, however long it is that Trump has been running, in the fear that our democracy would be destroyed. And so the relief comes that we now can talk about the real issues in this campaign. And I believe that Kamala Harris, some people think that, well, we don't know her. Well, if you were in America during the real estate crisis, you know her, and you know how she took on the banks and how she saved several thousand homeowners home. If you were here in America, you know the the fight that she took to Brett Kavanaugh when he was before the Senate to be confirmed, and how she asked the very tough questions. If you've been here in America, you know the Kamala Harris who is able to take up the fight and talk about reproductive rights and go all across the country. If you were here in America, you saw Vice President Kamala Harris go onto the world stage and talk and be very specific about how America is in full partnership with NATO. And so there are some people who don't know her, but a lot of us already do. And those of us who have the vote, we know her well, and those who only know her will get to know her well. She's a fighter, and she will unite not only the party, but she will unite this country. And I'm so glad about that. We can now finally talk about the issues.
Thank you. I think Pat Spearman could possibly be on her campaign team. Kristen, last word.
She will be.
She probably will be after that performance. You must be feeling relieved this morning. If nothing else, we can all stop talking about whether Biden's in cognitive decline or not.
Let's concentrate on the issues rather than...
We can get straight onto the issues, and we can go back to what we need to be doing as well, which is getting Americans registered to vote. And I cannot say enough, as Democrats abroad, UK, we have Americans living in this country. We have them living in 190 countries around the world. Every American citizen has the right to vote in at least federal elections. Many of them don't know that. They think that when they leave the U.S., they lose their right. They've got the right. And if anyone needs help getting registered to vote, go to votefromabroad.org. We're here to help.
Good to know. Kristen
Nice.
Captain
Thanks
Wolf,
a lot for coming in.
Thank you. And also Nevada State Senator Pat Spearman, thank you to you
Pat.
as well for joining us.